Welcome to True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin and Sambois.
Welcome back for another amazing episode. As you know, we are really, really excited oftentimes when we get to bring guest hosts and guests in general to be able to talk about more specific subject matter. And today will be nothing short of amazing. We do have a guest with us today.
Anthony Regalado.
Yeah, see, Maylin says that so beautifully.
I love that.
I was going to try, but I was like, let her do it because, yeah, that's really your thing.
I love Spanish so much.
Anthony is an amazing individual that I've recently had the opportunity to get to meet. And when you hear more about his journey and his passion, you will see why I also thought he would be somebody amazing to bring onto the podcast. Anthony doesn't just walk or wait for systems to change. He builds new ones. He has spent the last few years helping startups and small businesses build smarter, combining strategy, design, and now AI. From previously leading the Hispanic Chamber of Columbus to launching tech tools for underdog founders and modernizing small businesses. His work is about giving the little guy a fighting chance in a system not built for a new economy based on real builders and enhancing their impact in the community. So we're really excited to learn more about Anthony's journey. He presently runs Anarco Labs with his co-founder Jose, where small businesses and early-stage startups get access to AI-powered products and business planning with Latin American consultant teams. It's a core tool. Operative AI helps non-technical founders manage innovation from strategy to launch. So welcome, Anthony.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Christina.
My pleasure. I mean, just even reading the bio, I was like, let me put my glasses on.
Let me put this
on. There's a lot of big words in this description. Give me a second. But we're excited to have you. And I think Maylin in past episodes and we've always talked about how we're seeing such a change in business culture, day-to-day, social media, and really wanting to be more intentional as to how we are creating opportunities for more educational dialogue, more opportunities to create leverage, whether it's in business or your personal everyday life. And whether you love it or hate it, AI is here, technology is advancing. And so I think your expertise is so critically important, especially in a time where it's popping up faster than we can actually consume. So I feel like once you learn a platform, it's changed and all the things, right? And so before we dive into the AI and the technical world, I would love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. And so just, share with us a little bit more about your upbringing and really kind of any influential opportunities or experiences that really kind of drove you into the industry that you're in now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's good to meet you, Maylin, and it's great to be here again and talking to you, Christina. I think it's a very interesting kind of upbringing that I think a lot of children of immigrant families have in the United States. I was born of an immigrant mother from Colombia. My dad is an American from El Paso, Texas, but he is also from an immigrant family. So he is half Puerto Rican and half Mexican. And my dad was in the Navy for 25 years, so I also kind of grew up in a blue-collar-esque kind of home with a military dad. Really great guy. He's one of the most inspirational figures in my life, just as a person and as a man, and just having a lot of direction in my day-to-day. So he's influenced me a lot, definitely, and supported me, and I've always felt really supported by him. I like to mention him. Shout out to Patricio Regalado in California, who has his little ranch and his little goats and stuff.
I love that.
That's where he's at right now in life, and I love it for him. I think the biggest influence in my life was actually getting to know my roots again. When I left after graduating from Bowling Green State University in 2009, I left in 2011 to Colombia, and I thought I was going to be there 3 months. My mom said, why don't you go and get your dual citizenship? And I said, sure, I'll go and I'll stay 3 months. And I ended up staying 10 years. Wow. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences in my life. And I would wish the experience not only on children of immigrant families to get to know their roots, but also on any American to really understand the world and understand how culture is so drastically different and how language changes the way you think and the way you act and behave and your values and how they adapt to just different surroundings. I just think it was one of the most valuable experiences of my life. So that was like really the first jump off of the precipice of life for me. And then I started working. I started as a teacher. I had a degree in philosophy, and I didn't know what to do. And it was 2011, and I was like, I guess I'll just like teach at private schools. And I did that, and it was really rewarding for about 3 years. And then I came up with a thesis in my master's that I did in Bogota, basically on the intervention of AI and education. And the essential part of the thesis was the decentralization of institutions, how they're going to now start to become more democratized, meaning more accessible on an everyday aspect. And we could talk about lifelong learning and how upskilling is so important now in today's market, and how it's continuous learning as well. And it's so important to just continuously learn as a professional. And I took that thesis and I created my first company. So that's kind of where I got into tech, where I started to consult talent and development in Latin American growth stage companies. And it was just a really interesting experience. That was from like 2016 to 2021. And it was a wild ride, those 5 years. And then I came back to the States in 2021. So that's kind of like the beginning of my journey. It was really an interesting experience. Again, just like the cultural impact, getting to know my culture and getting to know like how powerful Latin culture in general is. I think was so important. And then how that pivoted me into tech. It was really interesting.
Right?
What was your biggest, because you said, 10 years, 3 months to 10 years. That's amazing. Congratulations on the dual citizenship. That's huge for immigrants. What was your biggest takeaway by spending those 10 years there, kind of like comparing to what you thought it was going to be to what it really was, or what you took away from being there for 10 years?
So the first thing is, when I first got there, I always tell this story about I got off the plane and I took a taxi and I realized I don't know Spanish as well as I did. This was in 2011, so I'd always been like a no-sabo kid, right? Like I didn't really know. I guess I thought I knew Spanish before then, and then you realize when you talk to a taxista from the coast of Colombia, you realize I don't know any Spanish. But you realize how important language is in expressing yourself and showing people who you really are, and also understanding that language is a tool that is adaptable, that allows you to communicate and express yourself. And the first 2 years, I would say, were probably the most frustrating, because I was really just trying to emote, right, and connect with people in the way that I know I am, in my authentic self. And it was so difficult just to grasp the complexity of the language. And I think we all know this. Every Spanish in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in Central America is so distinctly different. So not only capturing just the regionalisms of Colombia, which is also very nuanced, but also being able to do that for me was it was so rewarding. I feel like it unlocked parts of my brain. You know what I mean? That I'd never really, that were there, maybe like genetically, and then it's kind of unlocked that genetic history in me. And yeah, I mean, I think that was the biggest takeaway, but also seeing how I don't know, something that I really noticed about Latin culture in general is, and again, we don't have this upbringing here in the States. I think sometimes in the States we have a perspective of Latin culture that isn't necessarily Latino culture, it's Americanized Latino culture. And I realized, I met these key players in an ecosystem that were building great tech companies. And one of them was building, what became the largest logistics tech company in Latin America. And I saw them start in a small co-working with 3 people. And now they have 3 offices with over 3,000 people.
Wow.
Right? And you see that kind of hustle. And we are a very entrepreneurial culture. We are extremely entrepreneurial. We're a little bit rebellious, and we're a little bit, and that spicy Latinness makes us want to be creative and be different. And that expression is something that you see in business. And tapping into that in Colombia was also part of that 10-year experience. It was massive.
Wow.
Thank you.
I love that. And you said you came back in 2021, which was right at the height of the pandemic. And so, I can't even imagine, like, I think here in America, during that time, there was so much happening and so much information. And I think sometimes when you have access the way we have access now to digital tools, you don't know how to decipher what's actual factual information. And so even thinking about your return at a time where there was so much, not only things happening within, COVID or the pandemic as a whole, but there was also so much politically happening at the time and just unrest as a country. Share with us a little bit of what as you were seeing this unfold in Colombia in 2022, what were some of the biggest differences, how Colombia was reacting to, the pandemic, and then obviously when you arrived here?
And then tell me why you came back. If it's allowed, because I'm like, you were in Colombia. Like, just, if you are allowed or want to, no pressure.
Yeah, no, I can definitely talk about that. So the biggest thing that I noticed, the first thing was, it was funny to see from 2016 kind of the phenomena of the political change in the United States that was happening at that time, but from I'm not in that country anymore perspective. And I still have friends that are we call them nomads, right? Like they're nomadic. I have one of my best friends lives in Prague. Another best friend travels a lot for a lot of nonprofit work that he does outside of the country. And these are people that come back sometimes and they're just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest. It's very important to understand the context of my perspective was kind of like, I don't know what's going on over there. I have to focus on what's happening here. And during the pandemic, Colombia, shut down. I wasn't allowed to leave my apartment other than twice a day for 15 minutes with my dog, because I do have a dog. I actually brought her with me, so she still lives with me. And the cops would go around neighborhoods and make sure that you weren't coming out too often. So it was a strong lockdown. I could only go to the grocery store, I think 1 out of 2 designated times a week. That was matching with the last number of my cédula, my identification number. So it was very, very, very controlled. And they would check your ID at the grocery store so you couldn't go in. It was very different. And the thing that I always told my American friends that were skeptics as to what was happening was that what a privilege it is to have such a great healthcare system, where no one is afraid of questioning whether or not this thing even exists. Whereas in Colombia, they had to shut down because they don't have that same healthcare system. People were dying. People's grandmothers, grandfathers. People were dying massively, and they just didn't have the means to respond to it. So it was always, for me, there's a privilege behind being critical and feeling like, maybe I can be skeptical about whether or not this disease even exists, right? And I don't want to get into the politics of that, but at the end of the day, there's a strong privilege, and I think that in Colombia they were doing their best, especially in Bogota, where I was living at during that time. They were doing their best to try to adhere to very strict protocol. And it was admirable. And it was funny because I actually had picked up a round in 2019, and this is getting to your question. And we were gung-ho. So I had built a company that was a service model, meaning it was like an analog. There was no tech behind it, but essentially it was a company for talent development at these startups that we were consulting. And then we were going into an AI model. So it was basically AI for professional education. And we had like a cool proof of concept. We picked up a good round from investors, and it was the end of 2019. And we were like, we're going to hire all of our developers. We're going to build this thing out. And we started building in January, February of 2020. And then March came, and then all of our clients that we had previously and the new clients that we had lined up, they were like, we can't invest in technology right now. What are you thinking? Like, we don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the world. That was a big blow back then to me personally. So I kind of took some time, and then I came back in January of 2021 just to kind of collect myself. And, I saw the opportunities in the United States too when it came to technology and how it was moving. So those were the things that kind of were happening during that time in my life and what motivated me to come back.
Thank you.
Even hearing the way that it was locked down, because we were locked down here, but not on that level. Not that people are checking your IDs and then like the patrol aspect. And
we were upset about masks. We're like, we have to wear this mask.
Yeah, so
that was a big deal.
Yeah, but I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it does give perspective. Even though it was such a hard time for many people and for all of us really, but it affected people very differently. And I think sometimes you can get caught up in not really understanding like the privilege we have, even though some may look at privilege very differently. But just to hear you describe what it was like in Colombia in 2020, and then to know that I know for a fact it wasn't like on that level here. Like everything was shut down. Obviously, you couldn't go in. Schools were shut down. Restaurants were shut down. But it was
groceries were open.
The groceries were open. They had a flow of like elderly people before a certain time, but it was never what you described. And not that one is better than the other, but I think it is perspective into thinking, as you indicated, like a healthcare system, like, you know, God willing, you know, we were healthy, you know, like, I mean, for most of my family, only a few actually caught COVID, and they, you know, were able to go seek treatment, or they were able to get the resources that they need. But, you know, I think we tend to forget about other spaces that do not have access on the level that we have access here.
Mm-hmm.
And even like our delivery food. So that was a business that boomed during the pandemic.
Amazon.
Everything that was delivery,
Yes.
like people had a side hustle, right? You couldn't go to work, but you could go and deliver groceries for the elderly and all those people. So actually there was
Opportunity that
lot of
came
opportunity.
out of that chaotic time, for sure.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at like small businesses in Colombia and in any Latin country, I think you guys know that there's like those little carts where everybody's like serving coffee or they're serving fruit. Things like that. Those were the most impacted in Latin America because those are people that live on their daily income. You know, what I sold today will allow me to buy groceries and pay rent for tomorrow. And that impacted a lot of that small business economy in Colombia specifically. There was a lot of backlash, but it was more for that need, right? For that need of, hey, but I'm the lady that serves coffee every morning in the I was about to say the esquina in Spanish, in the corner of this really important street in Bogota. How am I gonna like pay for my groceries because we're shutting everything down and we can't do commerce, a daily commerce. And I think again that's another aspect of like that privilege aspect, right? There was no, not that I can remember, but, you know, nobody got any kind of money from the government
like aid.
Or any kind of aid like that.
Right. I think that's really important that you share that, because I think just, you know, you think about sometimes we can get so focused in on how we're impacted, not realizing like there's so many people that have it worse off than we do. And whatever season you're in right now, whether, you know, obviously we're reflecting on a period of time, you know, with 2020, but people are going through things every single day. Right now, there are communities and countries and so much unrest that's presently happening today. But I think this conversation is relevant because regardless of what's happening, to be able to pause and think about it from the lens of there is somebody that has it worse than you. Even though right now it might feel like you're the only, I can assure you that there is someone, you know, going through something so much worse. And so how do we pause and just really say, okay, how really is this affecting me? Like, I know it feels heavy right now. I know it feels like this is the absolute worst. But even hearing, you know, from that day to day, like that person with the cart, like that money is what they needed that day. And knowing that that wasn't an option, there was no aid, there was no support. I think it really does put in perspective, like sometimes how we can get so complacent in our privilege that it can certainly come across as, you know, that we are so out of touch with day-to-day life.
Which is why people have to travel.
Yeah.
Right? Like to that point, people have to leave where they lived and go other places to see how other people are living because it'll give you a good perspective of what you think is a hard day or a hard life. So I appreciate it. I didn't know that was going on in Colombia, so I appreciate it. I know people from Colombia, so I appreciate that perspective because it really, even going back, makes me reflect on like, we thought it was hard, but goodness, how many people had it harder, right?
And you think back, and I think it's a great segue into kind of our next kind of question for you, because I think oftentimes, you know, you reflect on hard seasons and you're often trying, whether you're in the storm, so it's twofold, right? Being in the storm, it can feel like this is just a lot. Like I'm never going to get on the other side of this. I don't know where I'm going. I'm not sure. You know, I feel like I don't have support. I don't have resources.
It's overwhelming.
It can be definitely overwhelming, almost paralyzing to where you can feel just stuck in this season. And then you have the optics of, you know, when you come out on the other side and the reflection of what have you learned? What have you gained? And I think you shared, as you were in the process of launching a company during this time and then feeling like you needed to come back to the States to take some time to regroup. So can you share with us a little bit about, the power and the pivot of you being able to, obviously you still have gone on to do amazing things in the tech world, but I think as our listeners, whether they're presently in a storm or maybe coming out of a storm, what was helpful for you to not get stagnant and stuck in a space of feeling like this is my life or this is going to be the rest of my life, and really being able to step outside of that to find a path forward?
Especially after you lost all the investors. Let's talk about like that moment where you're like,
Right.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's funny because now, 5 years later, you realize it's not that you don't stay stuck. I think being honest about when somebody's in that situation, to feel stuck is a very easy feeling. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen on Instagram but there's these charts that say, progress doesn't look like this, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's over time and it kind of goes higher and higher. I think that's so important to note because sometimes you will have days, especially when you're going through it like that, where you do kind of freeze.
Yeah.
And you didn't get anything done. And maybe all you did was you were just able to walk your dog and wash the dishes, That is okay to do occasionally, right? But how do you get yourself out of that, I think, is through very strong beliefs in yourself. Support from my family was huge. My dad, again, he's a saint, supported me through and through when I came back. I think that's what makes Latino families so important and integral, is that we are very supportive of each other, I think. Not to say and not to disregard that there aren't some toxic family dynamics. I think that's key too to understand. But I think that when you have that foundation, it's so important to come back to and to help other people really connect to their family and during a hard time is important. But I think the other thing is to also kind of rediscover yourself. So how does that dip in your life? And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but how does that dip in your life allow you to kind of pivot in many ways and reflect on how you want to change yourself? So, for instance, I mean, that might, for one person, it might be just working out more, right? Getting up earlier, being more consistent with whatever habits that they want to build and understanding their day as a habit and trying to do that and integrate working out. I think that could help. I think on the other end, seeking help and being open about that is such an important aspect. Hiring a therapist, not hiring one, but finding a good therapist and being able to have those kinds of discussions, I think is really important to kind of dig in and to really reflect. And something that I will say, and I think we all know this, there's a lot of toxic masculinity in Latino culture, right? So usually men, right, in Latino culture will hunker down on stoicism and just I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to keep going. And I get that. My dad's like that, right? Like my dad has that vibe. I love him, but he's that reflection of that kind of person. And at the end of the day, I love being able to, I think as a Latino man, have to reflect on, right? Okay, let's dig in as to what I did here and how I can use the lessons and the learnings to just be better. To be better as a person, to be better as an entrepreneur, to be better as a professional. What could I have done to just really reflect? And that takes a little bit of vulnerability. And sometimes people don't have, that's a tool that you can use for yourself and for others around you. Sometimes people forget to be vulnerable with others. And I think it's so important nowadays. I mean, some people try to rough it through the ego, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I would agree.
100%. I'm just processing. I'm taking notes, Anthony. I mean, this is awesome. I thank you because we always talk about the pivot and what do you do, right, to get out of it. So I think those are really good tools, especially for our male audience that sometimes in the Latin culture feel like they cannot talk to anyone because it makes them look weak. And especially when we have our fathers, right, that kind of represent that big ego. I think we have the power to change the script, right? We have the power for the next generation to open and tell them that it's okay to ask for help. So I hope that anyone listening takes away from this that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but actually signs of strength.
Yeah.
So you can be better.
Yeah, and especially if you're raising young boys, I think, regardless of like cultural identity, I think it's such a opportunity to start really kind of reframing even how we are engaging with young men, and making them feel like they can't express their feelings. They can't, cry. They can't, I think obviously culturally, I know that that's there, but I think that young men across the board, I believe, grow up with such a pressure so early on to have it all figured out and to be able to carry the weight of, to be a man and go out and to do all these things, but they're not allowed to address their feelings. They're not allowed to address their mental health. They're not allowed to have any kind of real emotion. And so I do think society is starting to turn that corner a bit. I'm starting to see much more conversation around mental health, but specifically around men, and, being able to really just create a space to say, listen, it's okay if you don't, if you're not feeling something's off, like say that. Because what I don't want to continue to see is young boys and men, continue to have higher rates of suicide and or isolation. Because those are things that we need our men. We need men to be leaders. We need men to be thought partners. We need men to be able to create spaces for other men. And so I know we're wrapping into our next episode here shortly, but before we close this piece of conversation, I would like to kind of hear, with that being said, I know you mentioned your father being an instrumental part of your life. In your professional career, we talked often about the importance of mentorship or guidance or coaching. As a man, is that something that you find, was that readily available for you? Or was there individuals that really took the time to pour into you in that way?
I definitely think that there are individuals that help me push forward in my life. I will say that I found more connection to individuals that wanted to, or that were willing to help a little bit more. I would say more in Colombia, because there's more of a sense of community. When I came back here, there's more of a sense of competition, right? And there's more of a sense, and I have to be really honest about that.
Thank you.
Because I think that while there's a lot of mentorship programs and things like that out there, what ends up happening generationally in the United States, and one of the things I talk about a lot with Anarco Labs and what we do and the work we do is we're going through one of the largest transfers of wealth that has ever existed in the United States and in the world. And that capital here in the United States is power. And there's so many people from previous generations that have access to that capital and have access to that power, but are not willingly letting it go to younger generations. So that mentorship can sometimes get a little bit, twisted, if we could say it like that. I think that when you're tapping into mentorship, though, you do find genuine allies, and it's very important to seek out the right allies and to see their earnestness and have gratitude with those right allies. And I talk about like finding my tribe. Your tribe comes to you. It's not something that you seek out. Understanding how to find that right mentor is very difficult, because in the beginning you might think that this person should speak to me, or I want that person to be my mentor. You might target somebody, but at the end of the day, if you're doing the right things, I'm kind of a spiritual guy. So if you're doing the right things, if you're walking the right path, right, you're going to find the people that support you as long as you're staying true to whether they're your professional values, your personal values, your ethics. People will come to you. So make sure that you're not trying to seek out that mentor. It's kind of like I kind of feel like I'm talking about like relationships too in general.
Yeah, because it is a relationship. Yeah, it should be anyway.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to allow that mentor to come to you, and to allow that guidance to come into your life, and to accept that help, that it will come to you if you're true to your values.
I love that. Well, I appreciate, the insight and the vulnerability even you've shown in this episode today. I think it's critically important to be able to have conversations like this. And I really loved your community versus competition. I think that will definitely spill over into the next segment where we'll dive a little bit deeper into Anarco Labs and learning more about this AI revolution and really how we as, people within community can really start to create more opportunities, and really dive deeper into just the learning aspect of AI and the technological world as we are learning it day by day. So thank you for listening. And before we wrap up here today, it's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.